One day each of us will close our eyes for the final time. Our hearts will slowly cease to beat and our last breath will whisper through silent lips as we leave this existence behind. Yet is this truly the end? Do we simply cease to be as the last spark races from our brains along cooling neurons to its final destination in oblivion? Or does the part of us that is uniquely our own continue beyond the grave? Is there existence beyond the temporal? And if so, what mysteries might that existence hold? There are those who would have us believe that our lives end with our final tomorrow, that the physical world is both our beginning and ultimate end. There are also those who reject this explanation, instead contending that the physical world is simply one aspect of an existence which may stretch on through eternity. For now, we are left to wonder if the strange apparitions are a product of our feverish minds, or if ghosts do haunt the fringes of the material world. The ultimate truth may lie somewhere between, unknown to us until we each pass beyond that veil. And between our searching eyes and that veil lies a path that leads us to the shadows of legend. Hello and welcome to Shadows of Legend. I'm your host, Charles Romans, and today we're speaking with Kenneth Biddle. Mr. Biddle, would you mind to give us a little bit of background with your interaction with the paranormal?
Sure. So I started as a ghost hunter. I was always into the paranormal. I loved the stories. I grew up in the 70s, so we had the shows like In Search Of and Unsolved Mysteries, and I was fascinated by them. Eventually, when I grew up and became, an adult, I got to go out and actually when I got married, my wife and I bought a computer, and it was the first time we were able to get on the internet, which was great. We searched local groups, and I joined a ghost hunting group and went out with them for several years. And I was totally into it. Believed just about everything there was to believe, from ghosts and demons to monsters and UFOs and stuff like that. And actually, it was an incident in Gettysburg, which, if you want, we can get into a little bit later.
Okay.
That kind of changed my mind about things and started making me think a little bit deeper about people's claims, and including my own claims. So I started looking at the skeptical and scientific literature concerning paranormal claims, and that led me to Skeptical Inquirer magazine. And the more I looked into it, I also got into photography, so I had a better understanding of the photography process and how light was recorded on either film or digital sensors, and it just made a lot more sense to me, and I was able to explain or offer explanations for various anomalies. And eventually that led me to gaining a position, my dream job. Right now I am the Chief Investigator for the Committee for Skeptical Inquirer, which is under the Center for Inquiry. And basically I am a full-time paid paranormal investigator, which looks at claims from the scientific and skeptical point of view.
That would seem to be a perfect position.
It is the best job I could ever conceive for myself. So I'm happy.
Now, you've mentioned, of course, that you work for a skeptical organization and scientific research and things like that. I guess at this point, it might be a good thing to clarify. What are your beliefs on the paranormal at this point?
So I don't really hold on to beliefs. I don't like that term. I don't like the way it's portrayed, because beliefs are something that we usually grow up with. They are usually instilled in us from parents and family and friends, and we grow up believing in them, holding on to them, and that makes them very difficult to either change or give up. It's very, very difficult, because I was raised Catholic, and I am not Catholic anymore. And just giving up that belief based on stuff that I've learned over the years was very difficult for me, but I eventually got through it. So I don't like having beliefs. I rather have ideas. So right now I have ideas, and my ideas concerning the paranormal is that there's a lot of weird things that happen out there, but as far as I found, they have logical explanations. It's just how far you're willing to go to investigate and find those logical explanations. Too many people just, they see it, immediately say, oh, that's a ghost, that's a demon.
So what you're saying, basically, our belief system can lead to a type of confirmation bias, where we just find information to prove what we already believe, rather than finding new information and deciding at that point.
Oh, absolutely. Confirmation bias is one of the big issues with beliefs because, and again, in my experience, I don't want to speak for the entire population of the planet, but in my experience, most people have those beliefs going into something. And I mean, if we just focus on, say, ghost hunters,
Right.
most of the ghost hunters that I interact with, they go to a location and they announce beforehand that they're going to this haunted location and they can't wait to get all the evidence. They've already made up their mind before they even got there. So that's your confirmation. That's the beginning of your confirmation bias. That's actually your priming. So they're primed to interpret things in a way that supports their belief. So yeah, what you're saying, basically is true. Yes.
So I wanted to clarify something else too. You've been known to debunk things. And when you attempt to debunk something, is it simply because you want to prove, no, there's no ghosts, or you debunk it from the standpoint of if it's not something that isn't explainable, then it's paranormal?
I look at things, every time I go into an investigation, I'm looking for the truth, whatever that truth may be. I'm not looking to debunk, because if that was the case, then I'm already going in with a bias.
Exactly.
I'm already going in with an agenda, and that's just not the way you should investigate things. Just like what we just talked about, people going in already believing that a place is haunted and already believing that they're going to get a whole bunch of evidence before they even got it. So when I go into an investigation, I'm looking at the claims, I'm looking at the details, I'm looking at what can we test, what's provable, what's verifiable, and what is a speculation, an assumption, and I base my conclusion off of all the information gathered. And I mean, many times it's not just a matter of I look into it for 5 minutes and I write up a quick piece for it and I post it because I'm posting what I believe. Many of my articles take months to get through because I'm researching information, I'm ordering old out-of-print books, I'm looking for government documents, I'm trying to contact witnesses that take forever to get back to you, which is understandable because most people are like, 10 years or 20 years after an incident, most people just want to forget it.
Especially
but there's a lot
if it
of
was
work.
traumatic. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. If it was traumatic, or if it's become traumatic because maybe there's been a resurgence in interest and now they're getting hounded by people that just want to be a part of it or want to visit their house, even though it's a private residence, stuff like that. There's a lot of baggage that goes along with some experiences. So
I can appreciate that. Yes.
I guess in the end, that was a long answer. That was a long way to say, when I go into an investigation, I'm not out to debunk things. I'm not out to prove it's true. I'm out to find what is going on. That's my purpose.
Right. Now, starting out as a ghost hunter, for instance, there's a lot of strange things that happen that may not necessarily be paranormal. So
Right.
What's the process you use to filter through these things?
Wow, that's a big question, because it depends on the situation. If someone claims that they see an apparition, well, let's go to the scene. Let's recreate the events surrounding that, same conditions. Let's look at the claim and the details that are being told to us. If it's a gadget that claims to detect ghosts and it's been going off and giving certain readings, well, let's take apart that gadget and see what it really is supposed to do, as opposed to what it's advertised as doing. Because every gadget that I've taken apart has not lived up to the hype, the advertisement. So let that be a lesson to everyone. But it really depends on what the claims are, because I guess one of the first steps is to try to filter out the testable claims versus the speculation. So what can I test? What can we actually go in there and test to see if there's some other results, or if the results that are being gathered by other people are just misinterpreted? Or, I mean, maybe people are right and it really does have a ghost floating around. I don't know. Let's go see. Let's go find out. So I guess that would be the first step. But again, this is a big question and it really depends on the situation that's presented to me.
What's some of the difficulties you have with photographs?
Photographs, usually when I get a photograph, I try to ignore the story. And I guess the biggest problem is that when someone sends a photograph or shows me a photograph, they want to tell me not only the backstory of it, but what they have concluded. And I find the most difficulty when you engage with someone and they're already convinced they know exactly what it is. And it's very difficult because I don't want to piss them off. I don't want to get them angry, and I don't want a confrontation. I want to have a discussion about this.
Yes.
But when they present it to me as I know what this is. That usually means to me that they're only looking for me to agree. They don't want my opinion. They just want me to say, oh, yeah, you're right. So that's probably the most difficult.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate side effect of the human animal. We ask a question, and we already know the answer we want. And if we don't get that answer, then we're unsatisfied.
Oh, my goodness, yes. I'll give you a real quick story. I was at a Fort Mifflin in Philadelphia, and they were having a paranormal event. And I was there with a friend of mine, Paul Michael Kane, who is a world-renowned photographer. Not with paranormal, but like just industry-wise. He's world-renowned. So we're talking, and an older woman comes up to him, shows him some pictures, and he smiles. He points at me and tells the lady to come over and talk to me. And this has become a joke between us. Lady comes over. She's got a thick stack of old 4x6 prints, and she shows me this picture. It's a dark photograph. There's two golden lights in the picture, and she's like, look, I have these two orbs. I went to so many paranormal experts, and they all told me that they're real spirits, and I want to just get your confirmation on this. Like, she didn't ask what my opinion was. She wanted me to confirm already. So I looked at the pictures, and I said, this kind of looks like street lights. It looks like street lamps, during like a foggy night. Do you have another picture? Because this one is kind of blurry. So the very next picture is the same scene, but clear and in focus. And in fact, it is two street lights, because you can see the street lights, you can see the poles, you can see everything. And I said, well, there you go. She was so angry with me, yelled at me, because she called me stupid. She called me all kinds of names. She was really angry because I didn't give her what she wanted.
Well, see, sometimes you can't. Let me tell you, I'll tell you a quick amusing story, and this is how you can get confused. We lived, my wife and I, in a house in South Shore, Kentucky. In the middle of the night, I'd hear this disembodied voice, never could make out the words. And I knew my wife was asleep. It was just me that was awake, no radio playing, anything like that. I'm not a jumpy individual, but I acknowledge the possibilities of a large number of things. Well, this was in the fall, winter, cold. So as it warmed up in the spring, I was in the same room where I heard these voices, and I had the window up a little bit to get some fresh air into the room. And about 2-3 o'clock in the morning, I hear this disembodied voice say, "You're okay on pump 3." What had happened, I lived close to a gas station, and I was hearing this filtered through the walls of the house and everything, them endorsing the pumps. So if you were there and you heard these voices, you'd be looking everywhere for these voices and not being able to find them.
Right.
Now, that's just a very basic example. It doesn't mean that people aren't hearing messages from the great beyond. It just means that not every time something happens is it paranormal.
Right. And that's a good point. And when I do my investigations, they're not blanket statements. If I solve one case of a photograph or a alleged haunted rag doll, that doesn't mean every case is solved.
Yes.
That's just not what it is. It's just that one particular case is now solved, or, we have the best guess based on the information. It's not a blanket term. It's not a blanket conclusion. And I feel that that's some of the pushback that I get, because if I do solve one and I look into a similar case, the people I interview might say or push back saying, well, you're just going to debunk it. You already think it's not true. And that's not the case. I'm right there with everyone else. I want something to be true. I want to see a freaking ghost. I think that would be fantastic. That would be amazing.
It would be.
Yeah.
It would change the underpinnings of how we see our world.
Yeah. It just hasn't happened yet. That's all.
No.
And I will say the second difficulty with photographs, and this applies to video and audio, is the lack of information. There's a lot of information that's conveyed, but it's not relevant. It's mostly people's opinion, and like we discussed, they already know what they have according to them, and they try to tell you that. And there's a lack of actual details about what was going on at the time the photo or the video was taken. There's a lack of detail concerning who was around. And 9 times out of 10, when I do investigate an anomaly like that, I find that the details that I was presented were incorrect. Not saying that they lied about it. I'm saying that they were misremembering most of the time. Sometimes people do lie. There's quite a few people that do just outright lie.
Some people so desperately want something to be a certain way that they will lie to themselves, if nothing else.
Yep.
And that gives them their proof, and that feeds right into the whole confirmation bias. I
Right.
know that my granny's house is haunted because granny said it was haunted. So it has to be haunted, and that may not necessarily be the case.
And it goes to keep going with that idea. If Granny's house is haunted because she said so and she wouldn't lie to me, I get that a lot.
Exactly. Yes.
It's actually funny. There was a period of about maybe a year and a half where I was getting a lot of emails and messages from parents that were sending me photographs that their children had taken and saying that it was always the same kind of excuse that their kids got this picture. It's a ghost because my kid would not lie to me. And every single one of them was a phone app, one of them ghost apps. And the parents could not reconcile the conclusion because I would send them the picture of me holding, like in the palm of my hand, the same ghost that their kid had used in the picture.
Yes.
And they couldn't reconcile what I had given them with what their kids had told them. Like they couldn't accept the fact that their kid lied to them.
And it may not necessarily be a malicious thing either.
Right.
There's so
Right.
many factors involved.
I mean, most of the time it's just a hoax. It's a fun prank that a kid will play on their mom or dad. And unfortunately, the kids don't realize that mom or dad might take it seriously and then reach out to somebody else.
This is true because, well, for instance, if my kid was to tell me that something was around her house, then my first response would be to go eliminate that because I'm the parent here. You know, I
Yeah.
want to protect my kids. So I'm going to go into assuming it's real and find it. So that would be a terrible joke to play.
Yep.
So I was going to mention I have a huge reservation. I won't say that they don't work, but I have a huge reservation with technology that is used to assist spirits to communicate with the temporal world, we'll say.
Okay.
What's your opinion on these things?
Oh, I'm probably in agreement with you. I don't think there's anything that exists currently that does that. First of all, we really have to go back a step and establish that it has not been scientifically proven that there is an afterlife.
Okay.
There's a lot of belief. There's a lot of anecdotes, personal experiences.
Right,
but
and
there is-
it's safe to say that without being insulting because
Right.
from a religious standpoint, it's all about faith. It's not about fact. It's something you don't
Right.
know yet for sure.
So when we're talking about gadgets that claim to talk to the other side or spirits in general or have some kind of interaction, where's the proof? We need to know what's going on. The basic step is what's the quality of a ghost?
Okay.
What are the qualities? And I don't mean like, they're good quality or, 4K quality or something like that. I mean,
Right.
how do they interact with the environment? If they exist, how do they interact? And specifically, how did they interact with the devices that are being used? And if you don't know the qualities of what you're testing, the subject that you're testing, then you can't actually test for it. You can throw a battery of things at it and see what sticks, but then you have to actually pursue what sticks and say, all right, well, this is interesting. We got a result here. Let's pursue this and see what's going on. But we don't see that in the ghost hunting community. We see that gadgets that are sold as communication devices or detection devices, and they don't tell you how it works, mostly because they don't know.
Exactly. Now, to me, the most dependable one of the entire lot would be the temperature sensor. If you assume that the presence of a spirit lowers the temperature of a room, you have a device that measures temperature spikes, then to me that's accurate because I could take this device and set it on my desk, which I know is one temperature, and then set it in my freezer, which I know is another temperature, so I can measure that. So to me, that would be the most dependable one I would think of.
So with that example, I don't understand why it would be dependable as evidence of a ghost or a spirit.
Exactly. That's the failing there because, as I prefaced that, if you assume that ghosts are real and do that, then that's something that's measurable.
Well, the problem here is the issue is that there are no controls over what's being done. And this is a scenario that's played out over and over again. We see it with ghost hunting groups and TV shows all over. That devices like that, temperature devices, whether it's a standalone thermometer or an IR temperature gun, to make it easy to refer to. These are measuring temperatures. One measures the ambient air temperature. The other measures the infrared coming off of surfaces and judges by temperature that way. So what controls are in place that guard against anomalies? Because if you just leave a standalone thermometer out, it's measuring the air temperature. So if you get a cold breeze come through or if it suddenly gets warmer because you're sitting next to it and your body heat is affecting the environment, that's something you have to control for, because it could drop or raise a couple degrees depending on the environmental conditions. When you're talking about the infrared temperature gun, most people have this misconception that the laser pointer, which is so annoying, and you know what I mean. You're laughing. You know what I mean.
Yes.
They had this misconception that the temperature that goes on your display is just where that laser pointer is pointing, and that's not true at all.
Yes.
You have to look on the side and see that there's a distance measurement there. It's a ratio. So the further away you go, the larger diameter area is being sampled. So if you're, I think. No, I'm just going off the top of my head. These are not precise measurements. I would advise you to look on the side of your temperature gun because it'll have a diagram there. But for like 6 inches from the lens of the gun, you might measure an area or a diameter of 4 inches or 8 inches, something like that. So now if you're talking about a hallway that is maybe 20, 25, 30 feet long, you're getting an area that's 10, 12 feet, and you're getting an average temperature. You're not getting a precise temperature of just where that dot is. You're getting an average temperature of that 10 or 12 foot wide diameter. So if there's a window next to the wall that you're pointing the laser pointer at, you're going to get the coldness or the heat coming from that window, and it's going to change your average.
So if a person were to use that as an indication for ghost hunting, what they would have to do, they would have to take measurements around the specific room and record this data to find out if there were changes in one specific location. Is that what you're saying?
They would have to be consistent. I mean, to be honest, I would say don't use that at all. That temperature gun, don't use it, because it's just, you have to calculate the area, that the cone-shaped area. Starting, the point would be at the gun and then going out. You have to calculate exactly what you're measuring and then keep it on there. You'd have to keep it on a tripod so it doesn't move, and just monitor that area the entire time and make sure it's not in view of a window or a doorway or anything else, because that would have effect. That would change over time. But I would say not use it at all, because it's just not reliable.
Are there any types of equipment that you would recommend to you?
I would not recommend any equipment that is specifically marketed towards ghost hunters, because it's just, I mean, a lot of the stuff like the REM pods and Ovilus, these are all very overpriced toys. They're novelties, and they don't do what they claim to do, and they don't really log anything. There's no data to actually record. I try to make use of, so when I go out to a location, I try to make use of not only my SLR camera by taking pictures of everything, but I also use a 360 camera, so I can set that up in the middle of the room and take a 360-degree image of the entire room. And I do that through the entire house. And that lets me know, okay, I know where everything is when I came here. And then I'll try to do the same thing when I'm leaving, just so I have a reference. When I go through, no. To be honest, no. There's no equipment that I would recommend in a general sense.
Yes.
It really comes back to that idea of what claims are you testing? That determines what equipment that you need.
Right.
So if there's a claim that says this particular room has temperature fluctuations and they're drastic, we're talking like 20, 30 degrees within a matter of like minutes, or maybe it has like 5 or 6 changes within an hour, then absolutely you want some thermometers there. You want digital thermometers there. Again, I wouldn't go with the non-contact infrared guns because you don't know what you're getting, but just get the regular thermometers and have them attached to data logger, so that you not only do you have multiple data points, which means you have maybe 10 thermometers in that room. Now you have them attached to data loggers, which can take samples maybe like 10 times a second, once a second. I mean, the more points that you can get, the better. So if you can get like 10 or 50 times a second, then get it and then run it for an hour or two and then see if there's really are fluctuations. And then if there are, then you start zeroing in on what caused it. So I guess that's my answer. I always give long answers, so I apologize.
Oh, no, that's quite all right. I mean, short answers typically don't have a lot of information with them.
Right. Yeah. And it leaves it open to interpretation and stuff like that. So I always like to clarify. So I guess the summary of a very long answer is that the equipment that I would recommend depends on the claims that you're testing. There you go.
Okay. You mentioned data collectors. I've said this for years, and not just about the paranormal, but about everything. And you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, but data is pure. Information isn't.
Data is pure. Information isn't. So, yeah, data, well, I don't know about pure. It's if you do it right, you can get clean data. You can just take a whole bunch, like with the temperature readings example. If you leave the thermometer in there for an hour and say you take like 10 samples per second, that's a lot of data. That's a lot of data points.
Yes.
And you can look at that, you can graph it over time, and that should be a clean set of data. However, you still have to control the environment. Sure, there's nothing else in there. Because if you have someone that's on the side that decides, you know what, I have an interest in this place being haunted, so I'm going to help this out a little bit, and maybe they have a heater on and they turn it on or something, you have to control that environment, because that would not be clean data. That would be bad data, because if someone tampered with it. So, I mean, most of the time, if you're doing it right, yes, data is usually good and you can accept it. And then the information comes from that. You interpret it. You have people that are trained and or knowledgeable in that area. And that's an important point too. You can't just have anybody interpret the data. And just because they call themselves a ghost hunter or paranormal investigator does not mean they have any kind of knowledge or expertise in the specific subject. So say for instance, if we're measuring infrasound in a building, I could set up the equipment, I could take the measurements, and I could log all the data. But can I interpret it? Nope, not a chance.
Exactly.
And I wouldn't even try. I would seek out an expert, someone that's knowledgeable in this, that's trained in it, maybe the manufacturer of the equipment that I'm using, and say, I need to hire you or, retain you for consultation, and I need you to interpret this data for me. And that's what's needed. I mean, how many times, I'll ask you, how many times have you seen ghost hunting groups give expert opinion on topics they shouldn't be given any opinion on?
A friend of mine, Doug Waller's written numerous books on Bigfoot. He's been researching Bigfoot for years. And I said, what's it like being an expert on Bigfoot? He said, there are no experts in this field. He said, you can't prove anything. You can just gather information. So it's a giant red flag to me when anyone says they're an expert in paranormal. I'm like, well, okay, so you have coffee with ghosts. Is that what you're doing? That doesn't mean that these people don't have experience. It's just that I think sometimes you reach too far, and it comes back to the confirmation bias. We all want to be right.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's difficult when you're wrong.
It is. I don't want to admit when I'm wrong. My wife insists, but I will admit, especially after there's a preponderance of evidence, I'll admit, yes, I was wrong. Now, I do want to clarify, though, that we're coming down hard here from a scientific standpoint, measurable. But at no point have we went in and said that the paranormal isn't real. We've not said that anyone that's seen Bigfoot is crazy. We're not doing that. What we're doing here is discussing how you can get accurate information, accurate data that hopefully at one point or another will lead to proof of these things you're looking for.
Right. When it comes to people's experiences, whether they think they saw a ghost or Bigfoot or a UFO or alien craft or whatever, my first thought is never, these people are freaking crazy. It's right. Not. It's not, because they had an experience. They had some kind of experience. What that experience was, I don't know yet. And that's the point of my job. Like, I want to find out. I want to know what you saw. And it might not necessarily agree. Like, my conclusion might not agree with your conclusion.
Exactly.
But I'm going to look at all the data that comes in, all the clues, and I'm going to let that, I'm going to follow that until there's a conclusion that's based off of all that information. It's important. It's important to look at all the data and not think people are crazy, because that goes back to the idea that if you go in like that, you're going in with a bias. If you already think they're crazy, you're not going to treat them seriously. Yes. And you're going to be condescending. You're going to be a jackass, really.
Exactly. Yes.
And that's not the way to do it. That's not the way to interact with people. I mean, I live by the Patrick Swayze rule, which is to be nice until it's time not to be nice. And that's it. I mean, most of the time I'm nice, and it's only when someone really, really pushes that you get too serious, and I don't like getting that way. I really don't. I want to work with you. I want to understand what's going on.
Well, absolutely, because at the end of the day, I mean, you could tell me that you went swimming with the Loch Ness Monster yesterday, and I wasn't there.
Right.
And first question to me, hey, have you got pictures?
Yep.
So,
Yep. Where's your pictures? Where's your video?
but I'm open-minded enough to when you tell me your experience, I'm not going to judge you one way or the other. I want to hear your experience, and I want to hear any sort of supporting or see any supporting evidence that you have for that.
Right. And that's a good point that you brought up, is the open-minded part, because I'm often accused of being very closed-minded. And I mean, for me, the definition, as I understand it, is open-minded means that you're open to consider new ideas. And if you're closed-minded, you're not open to consider new ideas. So when someone says, I believe that this place is haunted, I know I saw a ghost, and no matter what you say, it's not going to change my mind. That's closed-minded.
Exactly.
Likewise, if I say something like, well, ghosts don't exist, I know they don't exist, and nothing you say can change my mind, I'm being closed-minded. But being open-minded is the willingness to consider new ideas. It doesn't mean that you have to accept them.
Right.
So if you bring me new information on a case that I investigated maybe years ago, and you say, hey, I was there, I have some new information that you didn't mention, I'm going to consider it. We're going to look at it. We're going to break it down. We're going to see if it's valid. We're going to research it and do whatever we had to do. And if it turns out to be valid, then I accept it and incorporate it into my worldview of that case. But if we find, especially together, if we find that it's not valid and that there was a mistake somewhere, then we reject it. And that's it. There's no harm. It's not personal. It's not like I'm pointing at you going, ha ha. It's not like that. It's just, we looked at it. We looked at the new information. It either did or did not confirm what we thought, or it didn't change or did change what we thought, and we go from there. But it's not personal.
Well, I guess conversely, if someone came to you and brought you a piece of audio or some pictures and said, please tell me this isn't supernatural, then you couldn't in clear conscience tell them that unless you could prove to yourself that you didn't think it had a supernatural origin.
Right. A lot of the stuff that I get when I respond, it usually ends up, like the last couple lines is that this is what I think it is based on the information you provided. And without concrete evidence, without being there and being able to have like something in my hand and saying, here is the cause, this did it, and demonstrate it, I'm left with the best guess. And that's it. I can give you my best guess based on the information. And then, hey, if new information comes up, come on over. Come back. We'll talk again.
See, and I would think that if you examine things as rationally as possible and try to eliminate as many random factors as possible, and then what you're left with is something that cannot be explained, I would think the process of doing that would help to support your claim.
So if you try everything that you know about it, and you still don't know what the cause of an experience was, and we're definitely speaking in general terms here. So if something happened, you had an experience, and you don't know what the cause was, you investigated it, a couple of weeks later, you still don't know what the cause is. Your conclusion is, I don't know. That's it. I mean, you can speculate, but when it comes down to it, you don't know what caused it because you don't have a cause. So my advice would be you keep looking, you search, you run your information by other people. But until you find an actual cause, you don't have a solid conclusion. So I see it a lot where, and I don't mean to pick on ghost hunters. I really don't. But this is usually who I deal with and engage with. So if I see ghost hunters say something like, well, we had this experience and I've tried everything I can think of, so it's pretty much a ghost. That bothers me because it's not. That's not how it works. If you don't know what it is and you tried everything you thought of, that doesn't mean that if you go to your next door neighbor, or if I, talk to you, Charles, and say, hey, I had this experience and I run it by you, you might know something. You might have some kind of background or skill set or knowledge that I don't have. And you might say, hey, why don't you try this? Why don't you try turning this light on and this light off and see if that makes a difference? And I go back and try it. Boom, we solve it.
Right.
So
yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I keep rambling.
Oh, no, please do. Go right ahead. Yeah.
I guess the point is, don't think that you, and when I say you, I mean everyone as an individual, don't think you are the end all be all. You're the final answer, because you're not. And that goes for me and for everyone else. We don't know. I mean, everything that I put out there, in my articles, that's based on the information that I'm given. But if somebody comes up to me later and says, hey, I have a different idea, I don't ever blow them off. I don't ever just ignore them. I say, all right, tell me what you got. And if it's good information, I accept it. And if I made a mistake, I apologize. And like we mentioned earlier, it's very hard to say you're wrong, but I will.
This is true, yes.
I do anyway, and I think that's actually much better, and it shows your integrity if you can admit that you're wrong, and rather than hide it. Like, I hate that. I hate when people are proven wrong, and instead of acknowledging it and owning it, they hide it and just ignore it like it never happened.
Well, there's a possibility, and this works in both directions here. People will just assume that something's haunted, for instance.
Right.
Or they'll assume that it's not, and that there is a rational explanation simply because they don't want to be wrong.
Yeah.
Now, you had mentioned that you didn't really want to be picking on ghost hunters. That is a broad target. And in fact, most of the television shows and things of that nature do deal with the actual paranormal, whether it be humans, spirits of deceased individuals, or entities from a different dimension or plane of existence. But what are some of the responses you have gotten from ghost hunting groups?
Well, early on, like years ago, we're talking like maybe 15, 20 years ago, it was a lot of negative, much more negative. People were pissed off if I questioned their conclusions or beliefs. If I questioned what their research told them, they were really angry. But I guess over time, because I'm not I don't want to say I'm confrontational, but I will challenge you on something if I think there's a mistake. So I have no problem with confrontation, but I try to keep it peaceful and more conversational than a debate. So the responses over the years have shifted, and I think more people are understanding that there's more to all of this. How do I say this? There's more to what's involved than just going out and ghost hunting.
Yes.
Like when you're talking about showing a ghost photo, I think people are understanding now that there's so much more about photography and editing that you have to understand and learn before you can just say, oh, I have a ghost in my photo. So I think with that understanding over the years, there is more acceptance of people like me that come in and say, I don't think what you have is what you think you have. So there's been a shift over the years, and now there's a lot more acceptance, and it's really nice. I really love it because ghost hunting groups will reach out to me and say, hey, what do you think of this? Jason Hawes, you guys know me and reached out to me because Jason commented on one of my articles. Yes. And most people don't know it, but Jason and I have been friends for years, and not just like people that know each other, they're like acquaintances because I saw him at a conference once. We met him, me and my wife, we met him at Eastern State Penitentiary when they filmed the episode there. We met him there. I talked to him for a little bit. We exchanged numbers, and we've talked off and on over the years, and hang out. So we're pretty good friends. And he calls me once in a while during filming to ask, "Hey, what do you think of this?" I'll tell him. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, to support what you said there, I was fortunate enough to interview Jason Hawes the first time several years ago. And I told him that we really appreciated their scientific approach. My wife is very scientific based about things. And I had said, you try to find what's there and see if there's anything there, not prove that there's something there. And I said, if I was to describe myself, it would be as an open-minded skeptic. He said, well, you have to be that way. Not every place that you go into that's supposed to be haunted is haunted. And then sometimes you go into a place that supposedly is haunted and you just don't pick up anything. And one of the telling things was, he said, you can't fake the information. You have to get what information is there.
And sadly, a lot of these TV shows do, some do fake information. And it takes real digging to get to the core of it and realize that it is fake. Jason and I have been, like I said, we've been friends for years. I love the guy. We have a great time when we're together. We hang out. But it's nice that I've criticized his work. And when I say criticize, it's not like I bash his work.
Exactly.
Criticize meaning like I've looked at it with a critical eye and
that's a
broke
good
it
point
down.
to clarify, because
Yeah.
when you disagree with someone doesn't mean it's like, oh no, you're wrong and you're stupid. It's like, well, no, I don't believe that you considered this. You're offering them fresh viewpoint, fresh information, and things of that nature. But most people don't see it that way. Go ahead, continue, please.
So yeah, when I criticized some of the episodes and the evidence that he's brought, or his team or show have brought to the table, and found other explanations for it that I can bring documentation and evidence in support of, and he's never taken it personally. And that's the beauty of our relationship. He doesn't get pissed off at me because I showed that he was wrong about something.
Well, and really he shouldn't. He should be grateful that you pointed something out. One of the things I was going to say, I like to be right. But
Don't we all?
I don't want people to just think I'm right.
Right.
If I'm wrong, I don't want people to think I'm right. I did a column for the newspaper about the exact thing. Don't just take my word for it. I'm going to do everything I can to be honest and present everything in the most factual way possible. But check my work, because I could have gotten bad information or I could just be wrong.
Right. Yeah. I mean, every article that I put out, all my references are there. You can check all my work. You can see where I've gotten information. I try to put as much detail as possible. I always go over my limit, and I'm sure you know this, like some columns have a word limit.
Yes.
Like, hey, keep it around this, like 1,500, 2,000 words. And I always blow past it because there's too much information. And I want people to understand this is how I got there. I'm part of that generation where you showed your work.
Exactly. Yes.
Always show your work. And I show the crap out of my work, because I want you to understand. And I also have that, I guess it's a benefit because I did come from a ghost hunter believer side. So I try to go back to that mentality and ask questions that 20 years ago I would ask and see if I can answer them ahead of time. That way, when you read the article, you're like, okay, well, that answers that question I had. That answers that question. Okay, good. I took care of it all beforehand, just because I like to be, meticulous, and I'm pretty anal with that. So,
but that's a good way to be. You can't just assume things.
Right. Because people call you out on that too.
Well, they will. Now, a lot of times the only proof is an eyewitness account. And that, to me, eyewitness accounts are viable data. They are, because this person saw and experienced this thing. And I would not dream of telling someone they were just lying, unless, of course, I thought they were lying. But if you could apply this scientific research method to their experience, then I believe that would help deepen their opinion. If you could actually proof is like a unicorn, okay? And I've discussed a lot of cryptids, and the possibility exists that there's creatures such as Bigfoot, skunk apes, whatever you want to say, running around in the great Northwest or in your backyard. But proof is difficult, because until we have a family of Bigfoot living in a zoo, not everyone's going to believe. But
I don't know if I totally agree with what you think about eyewitness testimony. There's a lot of issue with, especially memory, when people are trying to remember things.
There is.
We have a problem with like the God of the gaps, and people fill in areas where they weren't actually experiencing anything or weren't part of an experience, but even just remembering simple events. There's a lot of literature. Elizabeth Loftus is the world's leading, foremost expert in memory. And a lot of her studies, a lot of her work has focused around people misremembering things. A simple, like witnessing a car accident and giving a description of the vehicles and how often people get it wrong, or witnessing an attack on the street, somebody getting mugged, and how different the eyewitness testimony is of people that were surrounding it within 10, 20 feet of it. There's a lot of issues with eyewitness testimony. I think it's a good starting point.
Yes.
I don't take it as fact. I take it as, all right, this is our starting point. Let's start breaking down what they said and seeing what fits, what doesn't fit. Because I think that's where a lot of our misperception comes from. People see things, and I mean, optical illusions are fun. We see them all the time on social media and in books and on TV, but they fool us. We see things that aren't really there, and that happens in real life, and especially in the conditions that we're talking about. If you're on a ghost hunt, it starts at like 8 o'clock, you have some experience at like midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, you're tired, it's dark, there's a lot that can go on, and the misperception or misremembering of things is definitely a possibility.
So what you're saying is something such as encoding error could play a large part of it.
Yeah, you could definitely fool yourself, see something that's not there, or if you have that bias, that priming beforehand, if you're primed, like told there's a lady, or actually the ghost of a little girl, which is probably the most common story of all time. But if you're told there's a little girl in this house, then 9 times out of 10, I think that someone will come away from that ghost hunt or investigation saying that they thought they saw a little girl. And even if that's a fabricated story, which would be interesting to do, that would be an interesting but maybe unethical experiment. But that's beside the point. Remembering stuff is hard. We don't remember stuff like a computer. We don't have photographic memories. We don't take snapshots. We remember things the way we perceive them.
To throw something out here, this isn't actually scientifically proven, of course. This is my own personal opinion. I think in a lot of cases we're genetically hardwired to ignore things based on the survival instinct. We have a lot of information to process. If it doesn't benefit us or threaten us, we have a tendency to blank it out and move on to other things.
Yeah. It's part of an evolutionary trait where we've developed these choices and shortcuts because experience tells us that if we see a light turn on in the room, somebody probably turned on a light.
Yes.
That's experience. Even if we don't see the person, that's our experience. And we take a shortcut and assume that somebody was in there. And that throws us off. We can be thrown off by timers. If somebody put a lamp on a timer, that can throw us off because then we walk into the room and there's no one there. And it's like, holy shit, Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know if I can curse on this.
You're fine.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, you leave that house thinking that a ghost turned a light on and it was on a timer because 9 times out of 10, again, people don't check. But remembering things and trying to put into an accurate description events that happened like a couple days ago or a week ago, or, I mean, if we're talking like 20 years ago, which is something that I deal with often, it's a starting point, but I never take eyewitness testimony as 100% accurate. Never.
Well, there are too many variables. It's like I always use the example, we should all be cross-eyed, but your brain erases your nose. So, and based on that, your brain's doing things to you you don't know it's doing.
Right.
And part of those things are, like as you mentioned, belief, and then there's assumption, and then there's social awareness and things of that nature. There are too many variables. However, an eyewitness account is data that can be used because if you record these accounts, then you can see, well, this person, but you still have to question.
Right. But you can gather all of the eyewitness testimonies for one spot, for one area, and you can compare. You can do a comparison study.
Exactly.
And see what variables match up, what doesn't, if there's differences in like the main subject. If everyone claims that they saw a little girl, maybe not everyone agrees on what she was wearing. So you have to look at all these details and then really dive into it. Now you need boots on ground and get at the scene and see what's causing this. Because there's a plethora of things that could cause that are not associated with paranormal.
Well, this is true.
They'd have to be ruled out first.
So what would you say as far as, you're very experienced with the difficulty of proving or disproving anything. If you don't care, just feel free to make a broad statement. Based on this, what would you say to people who are in the paranormal camp and for people who are in the anti-paranormal camp? I won't even say scientific, because if you assume that at one point we'll have enough data, then this will become a science itself eventually. But what would you say to these two opposing groups
concerning
the difficulty of proof?
For proof, I would say, well, if you have anti-paranormal, I'm kind of thinking that brings to mind like cynics that just dismiss things out of hand. Is that what you mean?
Yes, because there's actually 3 camps. There's a camp that will believe in ghosts no matter what you say.
Right.
Then there's the camp that won't believe in ghosts no matter what you say. But the third camp are the people that are a little bit open-minded and think, well, I'm not sure, but it's possible.
They're on the fence.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
But to the two rigid camps, what would you say? How would you caution people who want to throw open the door to the paranormal, or advise people who just want to assume that none of it's real?
Well, I guess for the anti-group, I would say first, get the stick out of your butt. Just relax. Like don't dismiss people out of hand, because you're not going to get anywhere. All you're going to do is piss them off. They're not going to like you. They're not going to ever console you or take you seriously or approach you for discussion. They're just not. I don't like that. I don't like being that kind of dismissive and just, wave your hand and you dismiss everything.
Exactly.
Because I don't know. I do not know. That's my core philosophy. I don't know. That's why I keep searching. But for the people that do believe, when it comes to proof, to collecting evidence, read a book. And I don't mean like a ghost hunting book that's by a ghost hunter.
Right.
By all means, avoid that. I mean, they're entertaining, yes, but most of the time they're just stories. They're pretty much ghost story books with the same stuff rehashed over and over again. I literally, behind me right now, I have several bookshelves. Okay. And I have one bookshelf is almost entirely ghost story books. And I can guarantee you they say the same shit over and over again. There's nothing new. So when I say read a book, I mean go out and get a science book. Understand the scientific method and what that means. Because there is not one method. There's several versions of that method. And to understand it gives you a better clarity of what you should be doing, how you collect evidence, what kind of controls you need in place in order to make sure that what you're collecting, the data that you're collecting, is good. Here's a good point. Not everything you collect is evidence.
This is true.
I don't know how much I have to yell that or say that over and over again. Not everything you collect is evidence of the paranormal. It's not. What you collect is data, whether it's numbers, readings, or pictures, or video, or audio. It's data. That data needs to be analyzed and interpreted. You need to understand how to do that. And if it's beyond your capabilities, and that's not saying people are stupid, that's not saying, you can't learn, but if it's beyond your capability or knowledge base, find someone that can and get them to interpret it and understand that they might not agree with you. Just learn that whole process, because the more you learn about the process of investigation, the process of science, and then interpretation, how to collect data, how to interpret that data and analyze it, the more you will understand how much you don't know. And that's eye-opening. That's mind-blowing.
Well, see, I think that's the takeaway from it. It's okay to admit that you don't know, because the only way you can learn is to admit that you need to learn.
Yeah. There's a rampant issue called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is basically the less you know, the more you think you know. And then the more you know, the more you understand how much you don't know. And I mean, that's the way I can totally relate to that. When I was a ghost hunter in the late 90s, early 2000s, I thought I knew everything. I really did. I thought I knew all this stuff. You can ask me anything. I know the answer to that. And honestly, half the time I made the shit up.
My father was a phenomenal mechanic. He could fix anything and did this for 40 or 50 years. And he would still listen to people when they come up and tell him something, because he said, you can't know everything.
Right.
Somebody may walk in off the street and just it occurs to them and it didn't occur to you.
Exactly.
So you always have to keep learning.
Exactly. I mean, that's my motto. Never stop learning, because you just don't. The more I learned about photography and science, the different sciences, the methods of investigation, the more I realized, wow, there's so much I don't know. And every article, every investigation I do, I learn so much more. It's not just about, I'm just going to solve this case. You go down pathways that you never thought, subjects you would never think you would learn about, and it's awesome. I mean, I love gaining knowledge. I love understanding and doing experiments to understand things better. And we just don't see that. We see a lot of people, especially on the TV shows, There are so many people on the TV shows that, again, it goes back to giving that expert opinion when you're not a freaking expert.
Yes.
You know, it really we've been circling back a lot today. I like this. I
We
like this a
want
lot.
we want things to be neat. We want them to be compartmentalized. Cut and dry. I want to
Yeah.
be able to ask you a question. You say yes or no, and I'll go on about my marrying. But that's not the way these things work.
Right.
And but that doesn't mean that we don't fall into that. And
Yeah.
that's just something we need to guard against.
Right. Right. I agree.
So, what is the best way for people to take advantage of your information? Where do they find you?
They can find me on skepticalinquirer.org.
Okay.
That is the magazine that I write for. So I work for the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry, and that is a subdivision of the Center for Inquiry. I'm in Buffalo, New York, where our main headquarters is, and we have offices all over the country. But we put out the magazine Skeptical Inquirer. It's a print magazine. It's out every other month, and I write for that once in a while. But there's a lot of information in there. I'm not the only one that investigates this stuff. There's Ben Radford, who has a lot of books, and I honestly recommend one of his books. It's called The Scientific Investigation of Ghosts. It's a good book. It gives you the rundown of more of a scientific process and a really good, solid investigative process for investigating claims of ghosts. There's also Joe Nickel, who's written a lot. He's been doing this for 50, like almost 60 years. He's been writing, solving cases from ghosts to miracles to whatever. So yeah, skepticalinquirer.org. Most of my stuff is on there. I do both articles and I also produce videos for them and break down ghost hunting gadgets. I break down pictures, old pictures, new pictures, viral pictures, videos, methods, TV shows, what have you, I get into. So that's the best place to find me. I'm also on Facebook, so you can look at my blog, I am Kenneth Biddle, and that leads to the live stream show that I do Friday nights called the Skeptical Help Bar. So like tonight I do a show, well, actually, because this is recorded, it won't be tonight, but every Friday night at 8 p.m., I do a live stream show, and it's either like an open Q&A kind of thing where you can just ask questions and we talk about paranormal topics from a skeptical and scientific point of view, or I have a guest on and we talk about their expertise. Like I've had a psychologist, and tonight we're having what are we having? We're having Lee McIntyre, who is a philosopher, PhD in philosopher, but he approaches the paranormal from philosophy point of view. And he recently attended a Flat Earth conference and engaged with them. And it's a really interesting topic. So if you have a chance, check it out. It should be a great show, even though it hasn't happened for me yet.
Well, but now these things are archives. You can go back and watch previous shows.
Yes. Yeah, they're all on YouTube. So I have a YouTube channel called Kenny Biddle 42. So if you go there, all the shows are there.
Well, it sounds like a good place to start. And once again, I do want to clarify, whenever you say something like debunk or disprove or anything like that, people, that has negative ramifications. People think, oh, they're just going to make fun of me and call me stupid. But that's not the case. In your case, you really just want to find what's there.
Yeah, debunking is basically, it's taking the falseness out of a claim.
Yes.
That's it. And debunking is not what I do. That's a result of what I do.
Yes.
So I investigate something, and if you say, for example, if you claim that you have a video of a ghost and you send it to me and you've gone all over social media and you're like, look, everyone, I have a ghost on the video. This is great. You know, I should be on TV. Okay. And then I take a look at it and say, well, you know what? I looked at this video, and then I went online and I looked up walkthrough videos of the same place, and other people have filmed it. And with the lights on, because you had the lights off, with the lights on, you can see that there is actually a mannequin there where you filmed the ghost. So I matched up the film frames, found out that it was a perfect match for a mannequin, and there we go. We solved it. So I didn't go out to debunk it. I set out to figure out what was going on.
So you would more describe yourself as helping with clarification.
Yes, I try to improve the quality of everyone's work. That's Excellent. What I try to do. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Well, but I try.
No one has 100% success rate. And like I tell people all the time, the only thing that's completely dependable is basic mathematics. But, well, I really appreciate you being on the show today. It was a very interesting conversation, and hopefully we can do this again soon. And I will encourage everybody to go check out your stuff.
Awesome. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure being here.
Well, thank you very much, and you have a wonderful afternoon.
You too, sir.
Thank you. This is Charles Romans, and on behalf of myself and our guests, thank you for joining us on this walk through the shadows of legend. If you like what you heard, please follow us and visit our website at shadowsoflegend.com and support our Patreon page to help keep the content flowing. And if you would like to be a guest and share your own brush with a stranger paranormal, don't hesitate to email us and include a contact number. The strange and surreal, the normal and the paranormal are all aspects of the world in which we live. As you reflect upon the stories we have shared, keep in mind that the people sharing these stories are actual, real people just like us. Were the stories shared compelling enough to be given credibility, or should they be relegated to the deeper part of the shadows? But when determining this, it might be a good idea to keep an open mind, because when we look around, we might discover that our own world is less brightly lit than we once thought. Until next time, I'll be waiting for you in the shadows of legend.